Hi, I'm the Reverend Ann Truitt, and I'm the priest in charge at Good Samaritan Episcopal Church in Virginia Beach. And we are located right across the street from a university that has a population of LGBTQ students who we have been told need a place that they can find safe haven in a church. And we at the church would like to make ourselves available to do that. So that is what our goal is. We feel that we are being called to do that. So,
what makes your church a church that you think can meet these needs, and why are these important needs to be met?
Well, we are an extremely small church. We have literally about 25 people. We are a very senior congregation. A lot of self-described and actual grandparents who feel a real heart for young people. We have several things that students in general have been involved in. Namely, we have a very large community garden, and some of the students have come over. We have a professor who attends our church, and she's brought some of her students over, and apparently the community garden is actually very popular with the students, and we have youth from another church that come, another youth group from another church participates. And so that's sort of a common thing that they would enjoy doing. We are working with the director of youth ministries at the university, and she and I are working together to make sure that the university and the church are on the same sheet of music, and we are, finally. So right now the ball is in the university's court. We're just waiting to find out when we can actually get together. Because it is the LGBTQ community, we have to be very sensitive. I myself am gay, and I am well aware of how you need to be delicate. You can't just go marching over and say, "Hi, come over to our place." You have to make people feel not only welcome, but safe. So.
Awesome, thank you.
And real quick, Ann, you did great. So if you make a mistake here, just feel free to just say the whole line over again. You don't have to.
Okay.
It doesn't have to be perfect. So if you have to do 3 takes, you can do it as many times as you need to.
Okay, cool.
And so just hearing you speak, I'm excited for you. Do you have any specific hopes for the program and the potential of the program?
Yes, I think it's going to be mutually beneficial. We, as I mentioned, have an aging population, and the church self-describes that way. And they have a huge heart for outreach. Pre-COVID, and I have only been there a year, so pre-COVID, they had a huge ministry with some developmentally challenged young men. And every Sunday, the home where these gentlemen lived would bring them to church, and the ladies would fix a massive breakfast every Sunday. And then the guys would stay for church, and apparently it was just wonderful. Apparently some people left because they didn't like the noise. My opinion is, let there be a joyful noise in church. And that's the way the congregation felt. So after COVID, that has no longer been an opportunity. And they feel that this would be an opportunity, to, again, open their hearts. The one thing they're thinking about is it would be great to feed the students, They would like to prepare meals, which they do at a drop of a hat, and they're absolutely delicious. One of our longer-term goals, if we can work it out, is perhaps making Good Samaritan a home for just the general LGBT community beyond the university, but that's very far down the road. We're not even thinking about that much right now.
Awesome. And then, so then my last question would just be, why do you think it's important for the diocese to continue to support campus ministry programs?
Because there are students out there that otherwise would fall through the cracks. And if the Episcopal Church doesn't pay attention to them, nobody is going to. And the Episcopal Church, I think, is uniquely set to care about students, such as in the LGBTQ community. We don't just say, you're welcome in our churches, we mean it. We ordain people who are part of that community. We marry people who are part of that community. And I think if the diocese doesn't continue to fund college ministries, there are a lot of students and young people who aren't going to understand that there is organized religion that truly embraces them and needs them.
Awesome. That was
so good.
Absolutely, yeah. My name is Gareth Kalfas, and I've been in the diocese for about 11 years, serving as the missioner for Camp and Retreat Ministries, running Chanko on the James with a great group of folks.
Awesome. And tell us a little bit about your work with college students.
Sure. So probably my biggest amount of work that I do with college students is in that a number of college students are on my staff. Each summer I hire about 40 to 50 seasonal employees to work on the summer camp staff. And most, but not all, are college age, and the ones that aren't, a good number of them are high schoolers just about to head off to college. Of course, we also do retreat programs here. And so in addition to vestry retreats and youth retreats, we also host the diocesan Canterbury or college retreat every year, and I engage with those folks. And sometimes I also enjoy worshiping with the Canterbury program at William and Mary just across the river.
Awesome. Can you tell us why you think it's important for the diocese to continue supporting these college ministry programs to serve these students?
Man, it is so important, Megan. The future of our church lies in the next generations of individuals. And there won't be an Episcopal church if we don't have young Episcopalians growing up who will then raise their families in the church, just as many of our current parishioners were raised in the church. And so we need young people to be deeply rooted in their faith, and that's something that happens every day at our Canterbury Ministries. In particular, I see this in the staff that I hire. We have a lot of great counselors, and they do all sorts of things from lifeguarding and facilitating the ropes course to guiding campers through the woods, keeping our kids safe, and providing a great program. And time and again, I notice that some of our most spiritually rich, fulfilling, and deeply rooted staffers, and we're going to answer that question again, so just ask it again.
Okay. Why do you think it's important for why do you think it's important for the diocese to continue supporting campus ministries?
Yeah, I mean, every year, like I mentioned, I'm hiring 40 or 50 college-age students to work as counselors and work to run the summer camp program. And they do all sorts of great things: lifeguarding, ropes course facilitation, guiding campers through the woods. They're keeping our kids safe and helping them have a fun time. And every year I notice that some of the ones with the deepest, most profound faith, who play the biggest role in our faith formation programs, the chaplain program and worship, and the one-on-one conversations with kids, are the ones that come from our Canterbury program. So if we want to have deeply faithful individuals in this church and future generations, we'll find them in our young adult programs and our youth programs. So if we don't fund the Canterbury program, we're doing a great disservice to the next generation of our church.
And then just any last thoughts on campus ministry?
I think that the campus ministries in this diocese are fantastic, but a bit under-resourced in some cases, right? I'd like to raise up the great work being done at William and Mary and the support they receive from their local parish, and know that it's not equally possible for all the parishes close to the Canterbury ministries to do that. So any ways that we can provide the resources, especially the human resources, to make it possible for folks to lead those programs forward, that's a really big investment in the future of our church.
Perfect. Thank you. That was great.
Yeah, thanks.
I'm Jenny DeStanislaw. I am the rector at Mannequin Episcopal Church in Powhatan.
Perfect, thank you. And then if you wouldn't mind telling us a little bit about your college ministry experience, where was it and why was it meaningful to you?
I went to Mary Baldwin College in Stanton, Virginia, and I was not the best in attending chapel or worship. And one day the campus minister came to me and said, "Would you like to?" And I don't even think I listened to the rest of the sentence, because my mother, before I went to college, and I always felt that God spoke to me through my mother, said, "Say yes to every opportunity. Get involved in anything, and then you'll know what is right for you or not." So she asked, "Would you like to?" And it was lay read at the local Presbyterian church on Sunday. Well, first, being a female and lay reading in the church was a huge thing for me. And so to be able to have that opportunity and do it was exhilarating. And then she asked again, and I loved it. And I was there almost every Sunday lay reader. They needed a youth presence and a female. It worked out great.
Awesome. Would you mind telling us a little bit about how that experience played into your discernment process to become a priest?
Well, years later, when I started lay reading in the Episcopal Church in Petersburg at Christ and Grace, it flooded back to me as to how I was supposed to do it. And I realized that God was calling me back again to that ministry. And the more I grew in preparing by reading the scripture and coming closer to the importance of what I was doing, I realized that God was calling me somewhere else, and that was to ordain ministry.
Wow, that's
That's
cool.
a cool one.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it happened here, that call at Chanko.
That's awesome. Oh, I remember you saying that.
Yeah,
That's so cool.
yeah.
I'm just like loving your story. I totally forgot what I was gonna ask. Would you mind telling us why you believe it's important for the diocese to continue to support campus ministry today?
Oh, it's the most important because our youth in school need that spiritual support. And whether it's in the same structure that we have known growing up or whether it's in a different format, the support, the structure, the Christian presence, and knowing that God is with them, good times, bad times, hard times, difficult times, it is important. Campus ministry is, I believe, one of our greatest callings.
Awesome. Is there anything else you want to say about college ministry today?
You're doing an awesome job. Keep up the great work with all of our youth, and whatever support you need, look to the clergy in this diocese to support you.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank
That was
you.
perfect.
All right.
Sure. Hi, I'm Kyle Mackey. I'm the priest in charge at St. Stephen's Episcopal in Newport News, and I am the campus minister to Christopher Newport University.
Perfect. And will you tell us a little bit about that chaplaincy and what happens at CNU and maybe the struggles a little bit about CNU?
Sure. Right now, we are about 3 or 4 college students who come in and out as needed, but right now I'm running mostly a ministry of presence, where I make myself available. I show up in coffee shops. I've got a little placard sign that introduces me, and you'd be amazed at who sits down, talks to me for a little bit, and then I never see again. I wish I could get them to keep coming back, but hey, we'll take whatever touches we can. Just trying to be, I've said before to others that my main ministry at CNU is I just want everyone who needs someone to know that someone cares. I care.
That was beautiful.
Thank you.
Will you tell us a little bit about your own experience in campus ministry?
Well, I can tell you with 100% certainty, if it weren't for campus ministry, I would not be standing here. When I grew up in a small town in rural Georgia, and when I went off to college, I didn't even know the Episcopal Church existed. I heard about the Episcopal Church through the actions of the campus ministry at my undergrad. And if it hadn't been for the kindness and grace shown to me there, I would not be standing here today.
Awesome. And will you explain a little bit about how that experience helped you through your discernment process to become clergy?
Well, it was actually at the suggestion of my campus minister that I even put my name into the hat to go through discernment. The Diocese of Atlanta, where I came from, had a young vocations program. And one day the chaplain walks in and says, "Hey, you should do this." And I stopped for a second and said to myself, "Dan, have you lost your ever-loving mind?" And then I said, "Okay, I'll give it a go." And it was through the support of fellow friends at the campus ministry and my chaplain that got me through that first couple of years of discernment.
Awesome. And why do you believe that it is important for the diocese to continue supporting campus ministry today?
I can't remember who said the quote, but a society will have grown great when its people learn to plant trees whose shade they will never sit in and whose fruit they will never taste. Campus ministry is one of the best investments in the future that we can make. I don't know, perhaps one day those students I talk to randomly in a coffee shop will remember the Episcopal Church when they need a church home.
Hello, my name is Grace Rigby, and I am the Associate Rector at the Episcopal Church of the Redeemer in Midlothian, Virginia.
Awesome, thank you. And then if you wouldn't mind sharing with us a little bit about your experience with campus ministry, where it was, why it was meaningful to you.
Of course. So I first started going to campus ministry at the College of William and Mary to Canterbury. And I remember going off to college and thinking to myself, oh yay, now I can explore all these new things. I had grown up as a cradle Episcopalian, and cradle meaning that all four of my grandparents were Episcopalian. And so all of my aunts and uncles were Episcopalians. The people that married in were Episcopal. And so I really didn't get to choose the church for myself. It was expected. It was really deep in the culture of my family. And so when I went off to college, I wanted to try new things. And I just happened to, from a myriad of experiences, it was really important for me to choose the church for myself. And that was Canterbury. And it just was incredibly spiritually important to be around people that were asking, the same kind of questions that I was having. And it was so good. Such a great experience.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Wow, yeah.
I was gonna say Canterbury has a lot of experiences like that, and thank you for giving your testimony about that.
Yeah.
So my follow-up question to that is, how did that experience specifically impact your discernment process to become clergy?
Of course. So it was while I was in Canterbury in college that I was exploring my call to ordain ministry. And I was kind of tiptoeing around it. I was, pre-med and biology major, and I really was like, no, this isn't for me, but maybe it might be. And I had a great campus minister, our chaplain, who really walked me through that kind of process and mostly just listened. Until one day we kind of were tiptoeing around it, and he named it, and I was like, yeah, I think that's what God is calling me to do. And he was wonderful and really supportive through the process, because he happened to be at my home church, which was Bruton Parish. So it was a really unique situation, and it just worked out really well for me. So
awesome. And then if you wouldn't mind helping us out by giving maybe a little spiel about why you think it's important for us to continue helping campus ministry programs.
It is so important to continue campus ministry programs. There are people out there like me right now who are looking and searching, and there are so many options available when you go out to college. There are athletics, there are clubs and other activities, and it's so important to say that the Episcopal Church is also one of those things. That you can choose us, that we are important. It's not just, going to college, a gap time in your faith, in your tradition, that you can have that still, and it's so important, especially in that time when everyone's questioning and wondering, what is my faith? Where is God in all of this?
That was so beautiful. Killing it. Before we finish up, is there anything else that you want to say about campus ministry?
Campus ministry is the best. Love it. I'm here because of it.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much. That honestly wonderful.
Okay, I'm Les Ferguson. I'm the rector at St. John's in Chuckatuck, Virginia.
Perfect. And then if you wouldn't mind just starting off by telling us a little bit about your campus ministry experience, where it was, why it was meaningful to you.
I was part of the campus ministry Canterbury community at Oregon State University for about 4 years. And that was very foundational in both my college experience and then preparing me for life. I had a chaplain who was probably one of the most intelligent people that I've ever met. And he was very engaging. He served as college chaplain at Oregon State for almost 35, probably close to 40 years, and touched lives and invited people to be themselves. And it was very much something that helped me survive through the first 2 years of college. Lots of meals eaten, lots of family and friends that were created, and the lifelong relationships. The person who I'm speaking of is Reverend John Goman, or as we like to call him, the Reverend Dr. Father John. And he has been very foundational in how I have become a priest and what I've done with my life. He has taught me how to preach meaningful sermons, not just intellectual. One of his comments was, if you can't make it real, what does the Bible mean to us today? Then why are we telling stories about the Bible? And so that was a very important part of my life. And it created relationships which have transcended time and distance. And there are other clergy that I have met over the years who have been part of that Canterbury community in former or later years. And so the family of John Gomanites is expanded, exponentially. And in fact, we were speaking with Bishop Catherine Jeffers Torrey, and the connections that she and I were able to make through the Canterbury community and through him. And it's been very meaningful and very important part of my life, and very supportive of that.
Awesome. And then you kind of spoke to it a little bit, but is there anything specific about Canterbury that helped you through your discernment process to be clergy?
And well, the relationship that I had created with Father John, he actually helped me walk through the discernment process of what's your mission, what's your ministry, how are you going to function as I'm coming, so he would actually ask those probing questions. Okay, you think you're called to be a minister, well, what does that look like to you? And asking the question without, oh, that's the dumbest thing I've heard. It was more of something that allowed me to have somebody to reflect to and say, I think this is where I'm called to serve. And he said, okay, so how do you do that? And that ongoing process of living into that call, and the time and time again, this was a process for me that took 6, 8, 10 years of communication with him. And without that relationship, I wouldn't be what I am today.
Awesome. And then do you have anything that you might be able to add about why campus ministry is important today?
Well, campus ministry is important because that's how I really felt at home as an adult in church and in a church environment. And I know I've always felt at home in the church, but once I got to campus ministry, it was like, this is a place that I can function and accepts me for who I am and allows me to be me in a place where God is present and where perfection is striven for, but it's not essential. You do the best that you can and you move on. And that's part of why campus ministry is important, because it allows me to try things which didn't always work exactly like I thought. But then it also allowed me to have a place where I could try things and learn and get feedback and really get some real discernment about what works and what doesn't.
Just start by introducing yourself.
My name is Mark McCone-Sweet. I'm the rector at St. Thomas Episcopal Church in Chesapeake, Virginia.
Awesome. And then would you mind starting off by just telling us a little bit about your campus ministry experience?
I volunteered to be talk to you right now because my daughter attends Olin College up in Boston, Massachusetts, and she called me last spring and said, I finally found a campus ministry at Babson, which is a different college. And she said, I need the Compline service, and how do we pick the readings? And what were those good songs we sang at camp when I went to church camp? And I realized I didn't have that experience in college. I went to Wheaton College in Massachusetts, and I got there and there was a Catholic service every day in the chapel, and that was it. And there was no Episcopal church within walking distance. And church was so important to me in high school and middle school. It was my safe space. It was really where I felt community, and I discovered Jesus. I discovered the grace of God's love. And so in college, I had this big void. And so it turns out I was in the music department, and the Reverend Dr. Carlton Russell was the head of the music department at the time. And turns out I learned he was an Episcopal priest. And I told him this story, and he said, oh, well, why don't we get together on Sundays at 4 o'clock? And I said, sure. So we got together in the chapel, and this is the chapel where I sang with my a cappella group. This is the chapel where all the college functions happened, and yet it became our holy space as well. And we told a few other friends, and next thing you know, we had like 5, 6 others show up, all musicians of various sorts and different faiths. And for the next 3.5 years, we broke bread almost every Sunday, and we bring our instruments sometimes, and it introduced me to church. It introduced me to church in a whole new way. I grew up in this big Episcopal church with all the choirs, and I was an acolyte, and all those great things. And yet here I was with just 4 or 5 people sitting on the stage, literally together, and just getting to know God and fellowship together. It was remarkable.
That's such a beautiful story, so thank you so much for sharing. Thinking about your time in discernment to become clergy, how did that experience impact your discernment period?
Yeah, brilliant. I felt a calling when I was 14. At age 16, I figured that out. It was priesthood. And then I told the bishop, on a visitation, the bishop said, great, you got to graduate from high school. I was like, what? And I got done with high school, and the bishop said, you have to go to college. I'm like, what? So I got to college, and I was able to tell and confide to Dr. Russell, and then so he was really supportive while I was in college. So as I was coming out of college, he encouraged me to call the bishop up and get back in the process. He was just a great support. And then more importantly, he followed up with me in the years following. It took me another 12 years before I went to seminary, and he was there every step of the way. It was one of those lasting relationships. You know, when you meet someone who has an impact in your life, you don't see them very often, but every time you bump into each other, reunions or whatnot, they're just right in on you. I love you, I've been praying for you, where are you at, and encouraging and really supporting the vocation.
Yeah, awesome. And then just a last quick statement about why you believe it's important for the diocese to continue supporting campus ministry today.
Yeah, I think I already told you that answer, which is really bluntly, I wish I had it. And so, you know, again, my daughter just brought it to fruition for me. Countless youth. I support our youth ministries, going off to colleges and military and other services. And I can't tell you, when I was serving in San Diego, the number of lay people I helped with the chaplains so they could bring ministry to their ships and submarines as lay people. Just a yearning to be in fellowship. And so I want that for our youth coming out of our youth programs, as much as I wish I had it in a more formal way. Because I hear about my colleagues who had the formal programs at other universities and colleges. I'm like, that would have been so awesome. You know, what a lifeline, what a bridge to get through that time. So, yeah, all over it. Let's do it.
Hi, I'm Mark Vance. I'm the Associate Rector of St. Andrews in Newport News.
Perfect. And then if you wouldn't mind just telling us a little bit about your campus ministry experience, where it was, what made it meaningful.
All right. Are you rolling?
Yep.
All right. I went to Eastern Kentucky University and started in 1980. And I was a little bit backwards from a lot of people because, you know, you go to high school and you do what mom and dad tell you to do, those kinds of things. And then you go to college and, you know, you're on your own the first time, independence, you kind of cut loose. And I was in a way a little bit backwards. I didn't really go to church that much in the last couple of years of high school. But when I went to college, it was just the opposite. I ended up being very active on most Wednesday nights, and it just became the very small group, but a very active group in there. And so it was foundational. It would be very hard to find me not at Canterbury on Wednesday nights, almost from the beginning of college. So I was a little bit backwards with that, except that we were also college kids and early on. So we would go to Canterbury on Wednesday night, have the group, have the Eucharist, and, you know, then we would go to the bars. But that was foundational in a way I didn't even know at the time. So some of it is having to do with the decisions that you make for yourself as you're coming into adulthood. And you decide what's important. You know, you're not being directed by your parents anymore, and for whatever reason, that just became foundational for me to do that. That's the decisions I was making for myself at that point. So again, it's foundational in a way that I only realize in hindsight when you're thinking now 40 years later, and you realize how foundational it was.
Awesome. And with that foundation, thinking about your call to ministry, how did that experience play into your discernment process to become a priest?
We were active not only in the Canterbury group, but then Christ Church at the time was there. I mean, it was just a few blocks away, and so we were involved in the church as well. And that's the first time that I remember sort of talking about, wouldn't it be great if you could make your living in the church? I wasn't even thinking about ordained ministry. It was just, you know, it was important and thinking about that. But one of the other girls that was in Canterbury, who I had known before college, she was a year or so behind me, we had met at some diocesan event. Well, she came to EKU too, and we started dating seriously. And it was her mom who was the first person who came right out and said, "Have you ever considered the priesthood?" Well, I was 20 years old and I laughed. But, you know, I wasn't thinking that. But that is when you begin, that's how discernment works, even though it was way years ahead. But when you think back in that spiritual journey, that was one of the first times that was ever said, and that was probably in 1982, 83, and I wasn't ordained to the priesthood until 1998. But that is how that starts. And so that wasn't directly Canterbury, but it was close enough because it was the mother of a girl that I was dating who we were both very active in Canterbury. So that connection probably wouldn't have been made if it weren't for Canterbury.
That's a cool story.
And then would you mind maybe saying a little something about why you think it's important for the diocese to continue supporting campus ministry today?
That is it's a tough question because you're talking about budgetary things. Why are we continuing to fund this? Because it's not tangible. It's like I was talking about when I got started. It was foundational in a way that I couldn't imagine at the time. But then when you look back and the importance and the relationships that you make, the foundation it is for your faith life, if you're putting a budget together and you're basing it on the tangible numbers, you're not going to get an accurate indication, an accurate view of just how important campus ministry is. Talk to a lot of us, and the activity level came through campus ministry. So putting numbers to it, putting tangible things to it, you can't do that. But it is foundational in a way that you simply cannot put numbers to, and a lot of times you don't even know until some decades even later.
That was great. I love that.
Say that. So,
My name is Reverend Katie Beth Mixa, and I am at Christ and St. Luke's Church in Norfolk and the chaplain to campus ministry at ODU. Yeah, I went to college in Jackson, Mississippi at a small liberal arts college called Millsaps. And college was a time for me to start to explore my own faith and what it would mean to own that faith. I grew up in the Episcopal Church, and it was pretty much what I had known up until that point. And college ministry allowed me to explore all the different options that were out there, but ultimately it helped me appreciate and love the Episcopal Church a lot more. It gave me leadership opportunities in planning worship, and it helped me connect with the community around me in Jackson. That was a really important part of our ministry, was helping out with a soup kitchen called Stew Pot that was downtown, and getting to know folks and what their needs were that were there. Yeah, I loved it.
Awesome. And then will you tell us a little bit about how that experience helped inform your discernment process to be clergy?
Yes, absolutely. So I had many people during the time of campus ministry tell me that I should consider a life in the church, and what that looked like they were vague about, and I just kind of nodded and smiled and continued on with my life and tried out a few more things, teaching, working in nonprofits, but there was always this nagging sensation. And what was so interesting to me is that it was my campus minister who actually had a conversation with me at a point in my life when I was looking for a career change. And she said, remember, we've had this conversation many times, and you should really be considering ordained ministry. Why don't you hop back into campus ministry and see what it would be like working with young people and also with a parish? And it was through, as a layperson doing campus ministry again, that I realized my call to the priesthood.
Awesome. And then will you tell us a little bit about your experience as a chaplain and campus ministry with that, or a little bit about ODU ministry?
Yes. So right now, the most exciting thing about being in campus ministry is that we are on the front lines of growth in the church. You might have heard people worrying about where are the young people. Well, it is your campus ministers and your youth ministers who are connecting with those young people and helping them to figure out where faith will be for a lifelong commitment. So we are the ones that get to answer those deep questions, but usually actually it's not really answering them, which you probably know. We can't offer answers. We just help them to ask better questions and point them to resources where they can figure out what they're thinking and loving. And I am always surprised by the depth of the thoughts of campus ministry students, and also the level of care that they show in owning their own space and their worship opportunities.
Perfect. And so, I mean, you kind of answered it already, but is there anything else you want to say about why the diocese should continue supporting campus ministry?
Yes, they are the future of the church. I have one campus ministry student right now who will probably be a priest in a couple of years, and it's great to be able to have those conversations with him and help him to think through what that would look like and get him connected to a church where that might be possible.
Perfect.
Sure, I'm Lauren McDonald. I am a priest in the diocese. I work at Bruton Parish Church, and I also serve at Spirit Works Foundation with people in recovery from addiction. And once upon a time, I was the chaplain at Christopher Newport University.
Do you want to tell us a little bit about your experience with college ministry?
So my experience with college ministry as a college student was I went to Sewanee and I sang in the university choir, and I was more at church there than I had been at home, and I'd been a churchgoer before. And I didn't particularly participate there, but I was so engaged with the choir and with that particular campus. I'm sure that's part of what formed me to becoming a priest. But my engagement with campus ministry as a campus minister was that I was at CNU. I was very, very part-time. And CNU has a particular flavor. It's a more, even though it's a public college or public university, it's lots of people from Northern Virginia come who are very more of an evangelical flavor than an Episcopal flavor. And so because I didn't have a natural community already built, I tried to think about how could I minister to them rather than what programming are they going to participate in? How can I bring the gospel to them? Most of them already knew the gospel. But it was like, how can I minister to the campus? What can I bring? And what I ended up doing was learning from other people and borrowing their ideas. And I set up a sign in the plaza outside the dining hall that said, "How may I pray for you?" And just prayed for people who came up, and then wrote a little blog about it. And I had a group of Episcopal students for whom I think it was really important grounding part of their week, to come together, to talk with one another, to be, most of them weren't Episcopalian, but they just sort of came to the church and wanted to learn about it. But the wider campus got a sense of somebody being there for them. And I was that woman who prays, or you're the one who prays. You're the one who prays for us. And sometimes I had candy, so somehow I became the lady who passes out candy, but that was something entirely different. But I would just sit and have conversations then, and it's sometimes with staff, sometimes with faculty, sometimes with students. And I really did get random students just running up to me saying, "I have to go to class, but my aunt is having surgery today. Would you please pray for her?" I also took the labyrinth. I had a portable labyrinth, and I took it during exams and would invite students to walk it, and had some people have some powerful experiences doing that. So I think thinking of campus ministry is, how are we sharing the gospel, not necessarily just the Episcopal Church, but how are we ministering to? What are we doing for them, rather than looking for how are they going to come do something in our world that they may or may not want to do, but how do we share the gospel with them?
That was so well said. So just the last question is, why do you believe it's important for the diocese to still sponsor and fund campus ministry in this diocese?
I think, I'm a unique, a rare bird, can't think of what that phrase is that you say about that, in that when I went to college, I went deeper into the church because of where I chose to go to college, and because I was affiliated with the church camp in the Diocese of Atlanta, and I served as summer staff. In the summers I worked at camp. But though I didn't know it at the time, when I look back, those experiences of being close to the church in outdoor settings, with peers, were how I was formed to then go on to become a priest. And that I can look back and see the signs pointing to where I am now. I think the diocese should fund it because, it's an amazing field of people. It's just figuring out what our expectations are for what that's going to look like. And that there are people out there hungry for what we have. But like some other groups I know of, it's really more attraction than promotion. And figuring out how do we've got to know what the gospel is for ourselves to be able to share it with others and get them excited about it, and our flavor of how that is. So that's
No, that's perfect.
Hi, my name is Nancy Mack, and I'm the rector at John's Memorial in Farmville, Virginia. And we are fortunate to have a campus ministry program that the diocese has supported for a number of years. It's a combined program with Longwood University and Hampton-Sydney College. It's a unique program in that we do have two different campuses with two very different groups of young people, and we have found that campus ministry is a beautiful way to bring them together. And because we are in a college town, we have a lot of faculty, a lot of academic people, and through campus ministry, the students get to know some of their professors and have a greater sense of how God is playing out in the lives of their professors and how that impacts their life. And we are most grateful for recent support from the diocese for a program that supported an opportunity for a our current campus minister to have a forum of faculty to talk about their experiences, and had a large group, an ecumenical group of over 40 people, young people who attended this, who could ask questions of their faculty of what does it mean to be a Christian and to work in a public college? What does it mean to be a Christian and be a basketball coach? What does it mean to be a Christian and live in a world where not everybody shares the same faith? And I think that's a real benefit of campus ministry. Another thing we see is that because we have faculty in our congregation and staff from the two different institutions, we have students coming in and finding their way, and often the faculty or staff will invite them to come and offer to have them sit with them during the service, and so people feel engaged. Most recently, one of our campus ministry students said she felt when she came to John's Memorial that for the first time she felt at home in a church. And I think that's a huge statement, and it's a huge compliment to campus ministry, because our congregation is focused on welcoming students. That's a big part of what we do. I personally grew up going to youth camp and junior high and high school, wasn't involved in church activities in college, but I can say from my own personal experience of being active in youth ministry as a young person, that shaped my development and who I am today, and how I see the world, and how I see the world with hope, and have a sense of love, because I have been loved. I have lived in a community and worked in communities with people who appreciate and love students and want to lift them up and want the best for them, in a world where students don't always see the best, or perhaps haven't felt that they've received the type of love that they might have wanted and needed. Campus ministry is a place where they can have that, and I am most grateful to the diocese for their support, and I can't thank the staff enough. Megan Dern has done a phenomenal job coming out to visit our campus minister and our site, and has contributed funding to enable us to do programs that we would not do otherwise. And the opportunity for our campus minister, who has never done, even though she is well-trained, well-educated in theology and Bible, and certainly equipped to lead campus ministry, she hasn't been a campus minister before, and so that she can pick up the phone and call Amanda and have a ready resource, and who is always on the other end of the phone, and know that she can call the other campus ministers with the other schools in this diocese. That's significant. That's really significant, because nobody wants to feel like they're on their own and doing their own thing, but we are all part of a larger community, and we all support each other, and we all want the best for each other and for our programs. So on behalf of John's Memorial, I want to thank the diocese and say well done, friends. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Janae Gotzi. I am the rector at St. Michael's Episcopal Church in Bonnier, Virginia, Richmond. And I was the campus minister for Hampton, Sydney College, and Longwood University, housed at John's Memorial in between 2010 and 2012.
Awesome. So would you mind telling us a little bit more about your experience as a college chaplain and what some meaningful parts of it were?
Well, it was really interesting. I'd been a high school teacher when one of my first vocations, and so working with young people was very important for me. And my own children were beginning to go into college at the time that I was starting campus ministry as well. So it's, for me, it was enlivening to be with young people who are fresh and open, eager to ask questions in a safe place. And that's really what I felt the campus ministry was able to offer. I also had we did many things both as the Episcopal campus ministry and in joint ministry with other campus ministries. So for example, we joined the Catholic campus ministry to did a couple of pilgrimages up to Washington, D.C., to the National Cathedral, to experience some the interesting artifacts that were at the Franciscan monastery up there. And then one year we did a homeless challenge, which I grew so much from personally, and the students did as well, where we spent 48 hours living as homeless people in a supervised setting with the Homeless Coalition in Washington, D.C. And so really helped me, as well as the students, see what being marginalized and being homeless was really like, at least for those 48 hours. So that was really significant. I think also one thing that I found in our times of worship and conversation and Bible study, whatever we would do any given week with the campus ministry students, that I had during the time a couple of students discerning a call to ministry. And so being able to walk with them in those early steps of, is this the right path? What are my next steps? How do I take the next action to really see if this is where God's calling me to? And if not ordained ministry, what is the ministry that God has called me to? Because we are all ministers by virtue of our baptism.
I love that. I think that was one of the things we wanted to highlight too, of sometimes your call isn't to ministry, but having the opportunity and the space to do that. So thank you. And then if you wouldn't mind just sharing a little bit about why you believe it's important for the diocese to continue sponsoring these college ministry programs.
I think it's really important because, first of all, these are seeds that are planted that we don't know how they're going to sprout and grow in the future. Having important connections with the church and with God at a young age is what will help bring people further into the life of the church. I mean, the church is not, these are the future of the church, so these are the people who are the church now, our young people of the church now. And, but they also will be our future. And so if we don't invest now in our younger people, campus ministry being a key time where people are finding the freedom to ask questions, the freedom to explore different ideas, to step outside of maybe a tradition that they grew up with, try something different. We had students coming from very conservative churches try out the Episcopal campus ministry because they knew there was more freedom and more openness to talk about things that they hadn't been allowed to talk about before. So having this diocese support that helps give the programs the money they need to hire campus ministers and also provide for the programming that will help the students grow.
Awesome. That was perfect.
Hi, I'm Lisa Green. I'm the rector of St. Martin's Episcopal Church in Williamsburg. And coming back to Williamsburg was special for me because I graduated in 1983 from the College of William and Mary. So I just had my 40th reunion weekend this past weekend.
Awesome. And will you tell us a little bit about your experience with campus ministry, why it was meaningful, a little bit more about William and Mary in particular?
Yeah, I was Roman Catholic at the time when I was in college there, and there was a covenant between the Catholic Student Association and Canterbury. And so that was really where I was introduced to the Episcopal Church, and we did a lot of social activities together. We did outreach. We had joint services from time to time with separate consecrations, and the occasional Episco Disco, which was great. And so really it helped form me, and it was, made me aware of the Episcopal Church, and so the Episcopal Church was there when I needed it later when I left the Catholic Church. My marriage ended, there were a number of things happening, and it was just the Episcopal Church was a great, familiar stepping place for me. So that was about 10 years after graduation when that happened. But the other thing that I was involved in is Encounter with Christ, which was like college level Curcio. And so I was on a couple weekends, and they were just starting Episcopal Encounter at that time. So that was another partnership. The two campus ministers, Roman Catholic and Episcopal, were friends. And so it just created this really ecumenical environment. And the other thing for me in terms of what I recognized later as really priestly formation was that I was minoring in religion, so I had the kind of academic study going on, and also intense kind of worship and small group fellowship, and there were weekday services, and I sang in the Evensong Choir at Bruton. And so looking back, it was really like a kind of seminary experience, more so than when I actually went to seminary, because I was working full-time and was just a commuter in seminary. So my experience of William and Mary, in particular campus ministry, from both my Roman Catholic and Episcopal chaplains, was foundational for what became my ministry.
Awesome. And if you wouldn't mind expanding on that a little bit, of how that experience in campus ministry helped you understand your call to be clergy and that discernment process.
I think one of the things is just that intense experience of community, which, you know, when you're in college and maybe away from home for the first time, and you're living with people, there's just an intensity and an intimacy of relationship that really helps create a kind of unique, intense form of Christian community. And so I think for me, it was not only, you know, valuable in the moment that I needed it, you know, for myself, but it also kind of created a sense of what was possible for Christian community that I've continued to pursue, you know, throughout my life and look for, kind of, that to try to recapture in some ways that sense of deep friendship, shared purpose, and just really, you know, especially through encounter, experiencing the sense of that we are part of the body of Christ that, you know, began with Jesus' disciples and continues to this day. And it was just like a real live experience of that.
Awesome. I love that answer. It's such a good one. And then just the final question is, why do you believe, or if you can explain to us why you think that the diocese should continue to support campus ministry today?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, number one, because we're ministering to the people who are in college and they're part of our flock and our, you know, our responsibility, our friends and neighbors, and we need to be there for them. But also because you're planting seeds that will, you know, equip them to be leaders in the church, whether it's ordained leaders or lay leaders, to give them that experience of Christian community that they can bring then into their parishes and into the rest of their lives. I think it's a particularly fertile time for those kind of learnings about theology and the church and spirituality, and you can just, you know, build the foundation for everything that's going to come later.
I'm Charlie Bauer. I'm the Associate for Christian Formation at Bruton Parish in Williamsburg, and I also serve as the chaplain for William and Mary.
Perfect. And then I know that you're a chaplain, but I want to start off a little bit with your experience with campus ministry. So if you wouldn't mind telling us where that was, why it was meaningful to you.
So I spent my entire childhood growing up in Wisconsin, far away from this place, but was not an Episcopalian for most of that time. I came to the Episcopal Church and to Christianity when I was in high school. And so when I came to college and I attended William and Mary here in Williamsburg, the idea of a church community was still something fairly new for me and something I was exploring. And I remember very clearly my first opportunity to gather with the Canterbury community at William and Mary. We had an ice cream event at a local ice cream place within the first week of school starting, my freshman year. And I knew I had found my people. I knew that I had found a community that was loving and respecting and thoughtful and open for growth, which is just what I needed and didn't know just how much I needed. The thing that meant so much to me was the relationships. And the relationships that have lasted, many of these people I still keep in touch with 15 years later. And it was the grounding of those relationships that sustained me throughout my 4 years of undergrad, but also then allowed me the safety to explore my faith in what turned out to be very profound ways for each of us in our different ways of exploring that faith. It was the safety to ask those hard questions that I know all of us have, but are sometimes afraid to ask. It was that safety to make some profound mistakes, as looking back, I know that I do still make, but certainly did in my undergraduate years. It was the safety knowing that I could grow in my faith and continue in my faith. So I'm incredibly grateful for the grounding of Canterbury that sustained me throughout my 4 years at William & Mary.
Yeah, awesome. And with that grounding that you're talking about, can you speak a little to how that experience helped you understand your call to ministry and the discernment process with that?
Absolutely. I arrived at William & Mary even then having an inkling that perhaps there was something, there was a tug toward ministry of some sort for me. The first person to tap me on the shoulder happened even before I was in college. But again, it comes down to that safe place to explore and to be with other people who were doing the exact same thing in their own way. I was very grateful. My first chaplain at William & Mary, the Reverend Sandy Key, would preach regularly on the importance of using these years in college as a training ground for ministry of all kinds. And he would speak not specifically toward training for ordained ministry. He would say regularly that his goal was to send people out to be the best senior wardens there could be. And not just specific to that, but that that our experience as Canterburyans would lead us to be able to step into a parish in any capacity at all, whether that's a youth director or as a senior warden or as a priest or anything that a church might need, that those years would form us. And so I took a somewhat slow path toward that calling, my calling. I spent some years after I graduated continuing to discern and then to enter into the public discernment process through my parish and through the diocese. But that could not have happened and would not have happened if I did not have that supporting community around me that allowed me to explore my faith in campus ministry. And I'm confident in saying that I would not be a priest today without that community of faith at Canterbury at William & Mary.
Awesome. And then you're in a unique position being a chaplain. And so would you mind speaking to that and why you believe it's important for the diocese to continue sponsoring campus ministry in this diocese?
I see such hope in this ministry. Hope not just for the future of the church, although that is really, really important, that we are forming the next generation of leaders to arrive in parishes soon to serve as leaders. I know students who I have served as their chaplain, and I've been serving now for 3 years, who are serving on vestries now. So hope in future ministry, but it's hope in the present as well. The church is at its strongest when we are gathering together and listening to one another throughout our differences in age and all of what makes us the beloved community of God. And so to allow a space for our young adults to experience the church and to give to the church and to give to God, that brings me just so much hope that the church gives space to these people who have so much to tell us. I think I do my ministry best when I get out of the way and allow these incredible voices and incredible spirits of these people space to show us, to teach us what they have to say. My faith has been shaped over these 3 years as a chaplain tremendously just by being in the presence of them. And my prayer for the wider diocese and the wider church is that everybody has that opportunity to learn from all people and from our college students, because we have so much to learn and to grow together in faith.
Awesome, thank you. And then just the last question, is there anything else about campus ministry that you would like to share, maybe specifically about the William and Mary program?
Oh, I could tell so many stories. Let me tell you a very immediate story, which is here I am at our clergy conference in the fall of 2023 at Chenko on the James, across the river from Williamsburg, from William and Mary. And in a few hours, our college students will be gathering in our chapel on campus to say evening prayer. I'll be here, and selfishly, I'd like to think that they'll notice that I won't be with them, but in reality, they are carrying on just fine, because these are mature people of faith who take time out of incredibly busy lives as students and as people exploring their lives. They're taking time out, precious time out, to gather and to pray. And they are doing tonight what they do every week when William and Mary is in session. They are leading evening prayer, they are reading scripture, they are preaching, and whether I'm there or not, and it is an incredible gift to me to be there, so I miss being with them tonight, but whether I'm there or not, they are doing just fine. And I love that about this community, that every week people take time and make it a priority to gather and silence their heart and to know the presence of God and to pray together as students.